Hello there, welcome back to Talking Europe, where today, as we have done for about the last 3 months, we're asking deal or no deal. I am, of course, talking about Brexit, the United Kingdom and European Union together barrelling towards the end of the year without a comprehensive deal on how their relationship is going to be working as of January the 1st. We're now well beyond the 11th hour, so can a deal be done? Will it be a good one? And will it be a happy or an anxious new year for all of the businesses who will be impacted by this? To debate the issues, two former British members of the European Parliament. I'm pleased to introduce first off from Boris Johnson's Conservative Party, Daniel Dalton, who's now CEO of the British Chamber of Commerce in Brussels. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And our other panellist today is the former leader of the opposition Labour Party MEPs at the European Parliament, Richard Corbett, also joining us from Brussels. Hi there.
Hello.
Now, let's start off with a bit of a state of play. Ireland's Foreign Minister spoke to France 24 in the last couple of days. Here's his take on where we are.
Well, I think we're getting very close to that point, and I think everybody, even those in the negotiating rooms now in London, are saying that this has to be resolved within days. It's no longer a question of weeks, because even if we get an agreement in the next few days, the time is very, very short to ratify that agreement before the end of the year and to put all the preparations in place for that. So we really are at the very end of 4.5 years of negotiation.
So there we go. That was Simon Coveney speaking to France 24 the other day. Daniel Dalton, I'd like to come to you first, as obviously a member of Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. Boris Johnson said that he had an oven-ready deal on January 31st, the day the UK officially left the EU. He said that he would make Brexit a stunning success. Where is the oven-ready deal?
Well, hopefully it will come pretty soon. These negotiations obviously are difficult. There are still these very outstanding issues, and trade negotiations in general are tough things to do. But I'm pretty confident that we're on the verge of having a deal, and hopefully a deal that actually will be maybe more comprehensive than people have thought when we started this process.
Richard Corbett, your response to that?
I think it actually at the moment depends less on the few remaining issues in the negotiations than on which way Boris Johnson intends to jump. Because there is a wing of his party, on the right wing of the Conservative Party, who don't want a deal at all. They think that any deal keeps Britain tied to a degree to European standards on consumer protection, the environment, workplace rights and so on. They wanted to leave the European Union precisely to tear up these standards, to have a free-for-all market economy. And they're pressing for no deal at all.
Daniel Dalton, do you agree with that? There are British powerful voices pushing for no deal?
There are some MPs back in Westminster that, definitely don't want a deal and are concerned by it. But I think you'll find the majority of Conservative MPs will back a deal, as I think the majority of the country will. And indeed, I think probably the Labour MPs will also back a deal. So, Richard's right to highlight there are a few, of course, who will not support any deal. But generally, I don't think that's going to make the difference. I think if the deal comes, it will get through Parliament. The Prime Minister will be able to push it through.
They come from the very wing of the Conservative Party that voted for Johnson as party leader and therefore Prime Minister. He depended on these ultra-Brexiteers who don't want any deal with the EU, who don't want to keep us aligned with our neighbouring countries. Those are the people he relied on to become Prime Minister. And does he have the courage to face them down and sign a deal? Even if he signs a deal, it looks like it's going to be a bad deal, by the way. It does keep Britain quite distant from our neighbours, that reduces our access to the single European market for our supply chains as well as for our exports. It's not looking like a good deal, even if there is a deal.
Well, I'd like to pick up on that point about supply chains. The fact that these negotiations have dragged on for so long, well past the deadlines that both sides set for each other, has left businesses absolutely at a loss for what to do. I've spoken to haulage companies in the UK. There's also been Europe's largest haulage trade body saying that there will be problems simply because businesses have not been told what the rules are going to be. Even if there is a deal in place on the 1st of January, Daniel Dalton, there's going to be a certain amount of chaos, isn't there?
Well, the rules are going to change on the 1st of January, whether there's a deal or there isn't a deal. That's the date that the UK leaves the single market.
But people don't know
union.
exactly what those rules are going to be. And
well, the majority of those rules will be the same if there's a deal or isn't a deal. The customs obligations will come in on both sides, regardless of the deal. What the deal does or will do is more focus on things like tariffs, focus on whether there are any ability to smoothen some of these challenges. But the basic outline is going to be the same. And this has been known for several years. Now, businesses, yes, they have difficulties trying to know exactly what's going to happen. But the basic formalities are going to be the same whether there is a deal or there isn't a deal. And many businesses are already working along those lines.
Richard Corbett, how worried are you about this situation?
It's very worrying because even with a deal, Dan is right there, even with a deal, there will now be customs and regulatory checks at the border because we're leaving this system where we and our neighbouring European countries had agreed common rules, common standards and had a customs union. We're leaving that. So that means extra bureaucracy and red tape and form filling for businesses and checks at the border with lengthy queues. Now, we've all heard about Operation Stack, the lorries in Kent queuing up. Day before yesterday, I crossed the other way and saw the mirror image. Kilometres of queues going into Calais, lorries standing still. And the consequence of that for British supply chains is dramatic. Also, there were lots of people standing around trying to stowaway on these lorries, the so-called illegal migrants that we hear so much about that have been trying to cross the channel. Well, at the moment, there's a gift because the lorries stand still for hours on the motorway. It's easy to go from one to the other to see which one you can climb on board. So much for taking control of our borders.
Well, just in terms of, once again, how we've gotten into this situation of it being at the last minute, the European Council President Charles Michel said on Friday, the 4th of December, the real question is, which political future do the British want? This is a question for the British government and the British people. But at the same time, Richard Corbett, it obviously does take two to tango. There are two sides in this negotiation. Is it not possible that the EU could have made some bigger moves before now, considering that the impact of Brexit will be shared out among 27 member states?
Well, the EU has moved in the negotiations in terms of accepting that if there's a dispute, it can't go to the European Court of Justice. There has to be other ways of doing it. It's done things like that. But where the negotiations got stuck at the moment is Britain says we want tariff-free, quota-free access for our firms to the European market. The EU says, fine, but then they have to play in our market according to the same rules as everybody else. And Britain is saying, no, we want the right to have different rules on consumer protection, environmental standards, and so on. And the EU is saying, no, we're not having your firms compete in our market on the basis of lower standards. The British government has to recognise that.
Daniel Dalton, trust is an issue, isn't it? Just a few weeks ago, the British government ministers, some of them, said that they would be prepared to break international law via this internal markets bill, which I'm sure our viewers have all heard about, regarding specifically the Irish border. This has caused absolute shockwaves of a feeling of that there can be no trust between the EU and the UK. Surely trust is such a fundamental issue in negotiations. Hasn't the British government broken something here?
Yeah, but trust works both ways as well. And look, I was a Remainer in this debate when we started this whole process. So I'm not coming at this from an anti-EU angle. But I think the European approach and certainly some of the potential threats in terms of the food supply to Northern Ireland are something that the UK government needed to take seriously. So trust, unfortunately, works both ways in this relationship. And just picking up on a point Richard said, no one in the UK is expecting that British goods going into the European market don't meet European rules. That's not the issue. The issue here is that the European Union is trying to impose European rules even on all of the products that remain in the British market itself. And that is where the problem comes. And ultimately, this debate, whatever we think about Brexit, came because people are uncomfortable with many of these European rules and want to break free from them. They want to have that sovereignty back for the British government to make its own rules for its own market. This is not about goods that are going into the European market, because obviously the EU decides the rules on imports that go into the European Union.
I'd like to let Richard Corbett respond to that on the issue of trust about the goods flowing between the UK and the EU.
Well, there is an issue of trust, that's absolutely clear. But meanwhile, with all this chaos and confusion, it's interesting to see what's happening in British public opinion, because record numbers in opinion polls recently have shown a majority think that Brexit was a mistake, that Britain made a mistake in going down this route. And one can understand why. Remember, we were told it was going to be easy, it was going to save lots of money that would all go to the National Health Service. Britain held all the cards in the negotiations, we were told. One Brexit minister in charge of the negotiations even said we would get exactly the same benefits as now. Well, all that has proven to be completely wrong. Brexit's turning out to be completely different from what was promised.
All right, we've got very little time left. I'd like to let Daniel Dalton respond to that. Daniel Dalton, this is a YouGov poll from just a couple of weeks ago. Nearly 2/3 of British people think the UK government is handling Brexit badly, and 51% now believe that Brexit was the wrong move. Has this been a success for Boris Johnson, or should he perhaps not continue to be the Prime Minister for much longer after this?
Well, we haven't got a deal yet. So I think judge this once the deal's in place, and then once we see what the new relations are. But basically, the Prime Minister is delivering on the promise that he's put out in not only the referendum, but also in the general election, where he won a very significant majority on the back of this promise. So I think what he's actually doing is just trying to deliver the mandate that he was given by the British people just a year ago.
All right, I'd like to thank you both so much for taking part in this discussion.
In that election, the Conservatives only got 44% of the vote, won a majority of seats on a non-proportional system, whereas a majority had voted for parties that were demanding a second referendum to reconsider Brexit.
Oh, I'm sure British public opinion is something that we will continue to follow and track. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I'd like to thank you both so much for taking part in this discussion. Richard Corbett and Daniel Dalton, thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching. Hope to see you soon here on France 24.